Okay, a lot of people have trouble with this question, but you really can't get this one wrong. There are a few reasons. First of all, the textbook way to do it is really important. You need to know how to do it the real way here because it's going to come up all sorts of places on the SAT. So there's skills here that are fundamental. So I will show you a strategy way to do it. And the strategy way kind of proves my point that there's no reason to get this wrong because the strategy is actually really easy and should save you the points if you are not confident in the more textbook algebra way to do it. But let's do the algebra way first because it is faster and it is definitely necessary for the SAT. So we should look at this and we should obviously see that it's a quadratic equation. They explicitly tell us that. But we also know that anytime we have an x squared, we're probably going to need to factor to solve for x, okay? Now there's a problem here, and that's that when I factor, I usually don't have to deal with this x squared being more complicated, right? It's got a 4 attached to it. Normally that's not part of these, and so that does mess things up. I don't really know how to deal with that 4 in and of itself, and so that's what causes a lot of problems for people. So we should remember, though, this is an easy question, right? It's number 3. It's not supposed to be hard. So there must be some easy way to kind of solve this problem. And sure enough, just think about it for a second. All of these numbers are divisible by 4. So we could divide this entire equation by 4. And if we did that to the other side, nothing would change because 0 divided by 4 is still 4, or is still 0. So the 4 can kind of disappear without any consequence here. So we can change this to x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. And now we have a very standard equation to factor, and we need to know how to factor. It will come up in the SAT. So if you're having trouble, when this x squared is 1, which is what we just made it, then we need to find numbers that add to negative 2 and multiply to negative 3, okay? So the way to remember it, because when I work with my students and they have trouble factoring, it's always the same problem. They always get confused. Oh, which one is add? Which one is multiply? You got to remember this. Now, look at, they're in alphabetical order. A comes first, then M. Add, multiply. It's an easy thing to remember. So you have to memorize it. And then if you need to do some little like stuff on the side, a lot of my students also have learned how to do this, where you put the two numbers you need to think about in an x, and then you try to figure out what works. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to negative 3 and add to negative 2. So the only numbers that multiply to positive 3, conveniently, are 1 and 3. And I need to make one of them negative, and then the negative 2 tells me, let's make the negative on the 3, and that'll solve the problem. And right, so that gets me x minus 3 times x plus 1 is equal to 0. And then in order to solve, remember, we're basically turning those two factors into two separate equations. X minus 3 equals 0, x plus 1 is equal to 0, and then we solve for each of those individual x's. And that has the effect of switching the signs. So we get x equals 3, we get x equals negative 1, and that is choice B, and that is the answer. So this is fundamental algebra. This is on the SAT. It will absolutely be on your SAT. You need to know how to factor reliably, okay? So really important. And this other thing that we did at the beginning by moving away the 4, that's also very important. There will be questions where that's like the only thing you need to do to kind of get back to an easy situation. So you gotta know how to do that. However, okay, I understand some of us are not particularly confident with our algebra abilities. And even just looking at these answer choices, I recognize that if I make a careless mistake, I'm not going to know. Because look at the answers. They're all basically the same. They're all combinations of 1 and 3 and negative 1 and negative 3. So if I lose a negative, I'm done. That's it. I get it wrong and no points. And so knowing that that's a very common mistake and seeing the answer choices that that's what they're testing, maybe if I'm not confident in my algebra, I need another path. Or if you just didn't know how to get rid of that 4, you need another path. So let's pretend you can't do this. You're at this point and you're just lost. What do? Well, they're telling us to solve for x, and then they give us a bunch of x's, right? So try things in the equation from the choices, right? You can easily guess and check here. And I know we know that the answer is B, but if I were guessing and checking, I would do something simple first. So I would try x equals 1 first because that's easy, and I would rather not deal with complicated numbers. So what does that look like? Well, if x is equal to 1, then 4 times 1 squared minus 8 times 1 minus 12 had better equal 0. 4 minus 8 minus 12, that's like really, really negative, right? 4 minus 8 is negative 4, minus 12 is negative 16. So that doesn't work. And so every choice that has positive 1, I know isn't going to work. So that gets get rid of 2 choices, and now I don't even need to test negative 1 because it's got to be right. It's in the 2 choices that are left. So what would I do next? I'd test positive 3, right? Again, why introduce complexity? Why deal with negatives if I don't have to? So 4 times 3 squared minus 8 times 3 minus 12 is equal to 0. That's 4 times 9 minus 24 minus 12 is equal to 0. 4 times 9 is 36 minus 24 minus 12, and that is going to be equal to 0 because 36 minus 24 is 12, and 12 minus 12 is 0. And that proves that that's right, and there's B, the same answer. So look, the guess and check, like I said, not the best way to do it because the algebra here is so fundamental to the SAT. But this is a great example of how no matter your math skill level, no matter what it is, there are certain questions on this SAT that because of strategies, you are not allowed to get wrong. Yeah, fine, you might be stuck. You might think you don't know the math that you need in order to solve it. But by guessing and checking, by working backwards, you can still get those, and you've got to push through your confusion and look for opportunities to use those strategies to save yourself points. That's really how you improve your score, is you don't let confusing math confuse you. You find other ways, you use strategies, and you get the points no matter what. Important question.